Hello everyone, I'm Nökkvi from Birds of Play, and in this video we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the character of Seymour from Final Fantasy X. Be advised that this video will contain both visual as well as verbal spoilers for the game, especially in relation to Seymour, so view it at your own risk. But this is a discussion I really think is worth having, since Seymour has often been ridiculed, both for his rather flamboyant appearance as well as his seemingly over-the-top solution to the problem Spira faces. His answer to the problem being to simply end all life. So this is an invitation to re-examine a character that has been overlooked by many, and to try to give the devil his due. If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and support the creation of more Final Fantasy content like this. But without further ado, it's time to talk about the boy who was so blue, he decided to kill everyone because he had a different world view. As a Final Fantasy character, or better yet a Final Fantasy villain, Seymour can be found in the prestigious company of characters such as Kefka from Final Fantasy VI, Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII, and Kuja from Final Fantasy IX, just to name a few. But I also thought I'd mention these three specifically, because I believe that comparing their motives to Seymour's might help us shed some light on how it differs from them. For example, as a Joker-like agent of destruction, Kefka is mainly motivated by his desire to watch the world burn. Sephiroth, at least in the original version of Final Fantasy VII, wants to reclaim or lay claim to the planet in the name of Genova, and Kuja is a narcissist who would rather watch the world burn than to see someone else have it. Moving to the comparison with Seymour, one of the main things that sets him apart from these other villains is that Seymour is in fact not the instigator of the world's woes, be it by proxy or otherwise, but rather Seymour is in the same boat as everyone else, having to come to terms with a world almost constantly terrorized by sin. In this regard, Seymour and Yuna also have a common goal, even though their methods and their eventual outcome of their shared ambitions differ significantly. Yuna hoping to free the people from sin's terror by destroying it, while Seymour recognizes sin as inevitable and decides to free the people by destroying them instead. Coupled with Seymour's traumatic past, this seems like some classic over-the-top villainy, since it would be easy to rationalize Seymour's actions as simple revenge against a world that wronged him. Such an interpretation of Seymour's character, however, relies a bit too much on the player's own understanding of trauma, and a bit too little on the text itself for my taste. So instead of relying on speculation, I actually prefer to take Seymour's motives at face value, which might seem like a failure to look beneath the surface of his character, but I feel actually gives us an opportunity to engage more deeply with the game itself, as opposed to using the game to explore our own ideas about some foreign concept. That being said, trauma does play a significant role in Seymour's character development, and what shaped his worldview. As a half-Guado, half-human hybrid, Seymour was ostracized by both races and exiled by his father, Jizgul, in an attempt to keep the peace as a Maester of Yevon. Seymour's relationship with his father, and the fact that he also becomes a Maester later in life, also draws some interesting parallel between not only Yuna and her father Braska, who both became summoners, but also between Tidus and Jecht, who were both star Blitzball players. These generational parallels further contrast Seymour with Yuna, as well as Tidus, in addition to further establishing overcoming the past as one of the major themes of the game. But even though Seymour, Yuna and Tidus are all united by a strong father figure, I'd argue it's actually Seymour's mother who has the most profound impact on his development, his mother being the one person in life who didn't turn their back on him. However, by sacrificing herself to become Seymour's final Aeon, in the hope of him using her power to vanquish sin and win the people's affection, even in death apparently, Seymour's mother inadvertently led him to the conclusion that mass extinction was the only solution to Spira's problems. But how can such a solution be anything but the musings of a man driven mad by the world's failure to offer him a place in it? Well, I'd argue that Seymour's motivations would be best understood in conjecture with Buddhist thought and the endless cycle of death and rebirth referred to as samsara. There is a widespread tendency to interpret religion in Final Fantasy X and the Church of Yevon as an allegory for the Catholic Church due to parallels such as the idea of original sin, literally manifesting as the monster sin. We would also point to the Crusaders making up a large part of the Church's martial might, which is reminiscent of the Crusades undertaken in the name of Christianity. And we could even argue that the faith, or at least the High Summoners, could be interpreted as Catholic saints. But even though comparison with Catholicism seems appropriate, there is also great inspiration taken from Buddhism. We can see this by the fact that the Yevon script that is visible throughout Spira is inspired by a Siddham script, which in Japan is mainly used by the Shingon, or True Word school of Buddhism. The Church of Yevon also shares some other similarities with Shingon Buddhism, such as an emphasis on secrecy, as well as a ritual for mummification that is reminiscent of the faith statues, even though the faith statues look considerably better than Sokushinbutsu mummies in my opinion. We can also see a possible point of inspiration in the Jodo Buddhism, or Pure Land Buddhism, and the establishment of Dream Sanakand as a realm independent of the world as we know it. This jumping between Buddhist sects for inspiration, as well as the Catholic references mentioned earlier, points to the fact that the game is not set up as an allegory of any single religious institution. But coming back to Seymour and how his motivation should be interpreted through the lens of Buddhism, we can see that Seymour is someone who is not only more attuned to the suffering of the world than most people, but also someone who has come to learn the inevitability of suffering at a tender age. Since he witnessed his mother becoming the final Aeon at the hands of Lady Yunalesca, Seymour has learned the supposed truth behind the final summoning long before Yuna did. Thereby Seymour grows up with the knowledge that the spiral will continue indefinitely, no matter how many temporary respites a momentary calm might offer. This is analogous with the notion of samsara, since even the mightiest king will one day also be reborn as the lowly insect in the endless cycle of death and rebirth, the only way out being to break the cycle and achieve nirvana. Using this logic, Seymour's goal is to achieve nirvana for the entirety of Spira by forcefully ejecting the people to the far plane and out of the reach of sin. His plan might still be a little mad, but it does have some morbid logic to it that is furthermore based in the religious thought the game takes inspiration from. If I were to give two reasons why Seymour's ambitions might fall a bit flat, aside from the madness of it all, I'd say that one reason might be unfamiliarity with the Buddhist thought it takes inspiration from, and secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, the game might not depict the suffering brought on by sin viscerally enough for the player to truly sympathize with Seymour's solution. Because in the bright and vibrant world of Spira, people often seem to have ample opportunity to find both meaning and pleasure in life, regardless of the constantly looming threat of death. Therefore, in order to fully appreciate Seymour's goal, we must imagine Spira's plight to be more dire than we experience it through the happy-go-lucky character of Tiris. In this way, we might experience the failures of Seymour's character as a villain, not in terms of an unsympathetic motive, but rather in terms of the game failing to fully depict the true depths of the suffering the pilgrimage is intended to alleviate. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about Seymour as a villain or just a character? Tell us down in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content. But for now, and until next time, I'll leave you with some bird sounds.